It seems nothing is happening with crypto, and yet the foundations of value for crypto have never been stronger. The US government stance has flipped 180 degrees, and institutions and large corporations are getting exposure to Bitcoin, in some cases altcoins, and yet prices haven't moved much since December. Now, is this just a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, as we typically see in bull markets? Or is there something bigger happening? Well, let's do a deep dive into the price action and see what we can figure out. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you, like me, came into crypto because you realize there is potential here for life-changing gains over a greater 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable, savage crypto investor, kind of like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, you're in exactly the right place and with the right family, the Rainmaker family. Now, the reason I created this channel is because I was once new to the crypto space myself 7 years ago. And back then, I was looking for a crypto channel and a group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed important things like the investment cycle, this 4-year crypto blow-off top we have, and then a massive crypto winter. And then it's been happening every 4 years since 2013. I wanted also a group that talked about specific projects and the pros and cons for those projects, the risks of those projects, and the guesses at the upside if it came together well. I didn't find that. I found a lot of channels that would hype whatever the new narrative was that was being talked about, and it would help their channel grow a bunch. But I knew as an investor, in order to do well, I want to buy low and sell high, not buy really high and pray it goes even higher. That's not what I was looking for. And I think that's probably not what you're looking for. Now, you can join for more discussions. We have a free Telegram group, and there's a link to that below. You will find most of the Rainmaker family in the private Discord. In order to access the private Discord, you have to join the Patreon. But don't just join the Patreon without connecting up the Discord, because in the Discord, that's where all the discussion is. If you haven't joined us there, you are really missing out. And you can ask the people here in the chat that are part of that if they feel you're missing out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul, who is joining us today, invests in many different markets and is able to give us some amazing insights into what is happening with money flows around the world into different markets. But none of this would be taken as financial advice. So without further ado, make it rain on that like button and strap in for today's show and help me welcome Paul to the channel.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? How you feeling, Jay? You're a little under the weather, aren't you? But you're fighting through it.
Yeah. You can tell a little bit. Yeah, I have this cloudy headache and like foggy brain. Like I just love it when that happens, but it happens sometimes.
Well, you're doing a great job. So, you know, I've been there, and yeah, I can totally understand it. And look, maybe the way you feel kind of reflects a little bit as to people's attitude to the crypto market at the moment. They're feeling a bit foggy, and it's like, oh no, is this ever going to clear? But oh yes, it will. And you know, good times are coming. It's just the way I can describe the market here at the moment is there's been so much excitement. We've had this election, we've had this pro-crypto president, and we've had this big risk on area and big risk on narrative. And we've seen Bitcoin go and some of the altcoins selectively go. But this is more like a marathon. It's not a sprint. And, you know, if you can imagine sprinting out the gates at the start of a marathon and trying to go at 100%, it's not going to work. You know, the market needs these periods of consolidation to regroup. And ultimately, we're interested in the big picture direction. I mean, I say we, that might not be you. Maybe week to week, you're looking to trade in and out the markets. But if you've been following the channel for a while, we're taking broad brush, big picture perspectives here, looking at the signs that tell us that risk on is either on or off, and whether it's time to be bullish or whether it's time to be cautious and time to be bearish. And of course, in between, we get these consolidations. But from what we've seen for the last few years now, from the low, the Stan Bankman-Fried low, whatever you want to call it, FTX, where we had the most negative views on crypto, to where we are now. The outlook is far more positive than it's ever been. It's just that we have seen some massive, horrendous, you could say, pullbacks in some of these altcoins, and that obviously hurts people when they're uber leveraged and expecting the markets just to go one way. But the underlying structure of the market is still very bullish. We've got equities that are going up. We've got the dollar that's starting to crack. We've got precious metals that are moving higher. We've got the Chinese stock market that's moving up. We've got a Hong Kong stock market that's moving up. We've got European equities that were underperforming. They're now moving up. US equities, the biggest, most important market in the world, it's still moving up. And we've got a consolidation in Bitcoin because it's been, trading very aggressively to the upside. We've also got quite an interesting pattern in the spread between Bitcoin and Ethereum, where it looks like it's spiked in the direction of Bitcoin. And now everybody's going to be saying, oh, I don't want to trade anything other than Bitcoin because it's been the outperformer. And lo and behold, would it surprise me if everything flipped and Bitcoin just sort of did nothing and everything caught up? Well, let's see. I mean, that could be what happens next. So it would not surprise me one bit, because the market does pretty much everything it can to convince you are wrong in one direction, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it does something else. And I'll show you the chart that I mean. I'll show you why I'm sort of getting this inkling, and it's not like this is a completely 100% positive view. It's just that it is interesting that we've seen this technical setup, and I'm seeing comments of people not wanting to invest in anything other than Bitcoin all of a sudden. And I hear what the Bitcoin maximalists are saying. I get it. I get their view. I understand it. But this is a global liquidity-driven bull market. So it's almost like, yeah, the meme coins probably shouldn't go up, but they will. And other good projects might not move up because people are looking for the highly speculative things. But this phase is not over. So there's more to come from what I can see. Now, it could be wrong. Of course, anybody could be wrong. Maybe this is the top. It just doesn't look like it. It doesn't feel like it. And the probabilities are against it. Doesn't mean that's 100% going to be right. But if you look at what we've been saying so far, we were saying pretty much the same thing around 15,000 in Bitcoin, pretty much the same around 50,000 when everybody turned negative. And now it looks like the same sort of scenario, given that Bitcoin's gone sideways for so long.
Yeah, you frequently say that the charts climb a wall of worry. Is that how it's said?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Bull markets climb a wall of worry. And so what that means is that as the market goes up, people tend to trade from a counterintuitive point of view. In other words, I remember talking to an investor who, well, maybe not investor, private investor, kind of keen private individuals, likes to manage their own money. And we were looking at gold, and I said about a year or two ago, gold looks like it's going up. And she said, who can buy gold at these levels? And it's like, well, that's classic in a bull market, that people don't want to buy anything that looks, inverted commas, expensive. And I get that. That's psychological, because you want to buy things that are cheap. Now, I'm not saying that you or one or anybody else should follow that type of strategy. You just have to understand what works for you. And some people like to find bombed out stocks or cryptocurrency projects in a bear market that everybody hates, and they're contrary, and they understand what they're doing, and they have a strategy, and they don't take leverage, and they, and I think I'm making a case for how you approach the markets. You're confident in what you're doing, but also you accept the risk that you could be wrong, but it's worth the risk, because you're buying from a contrary point of view. Everybody hates it, but you're looking at the macro scenario and saying, well, look, these projects should do well in a bull market, and so I'm going to load up on them now. And then when everybody else suddenly starts jumping in on the bandwagon, that's when you offload them. So everybody has a different attitude to trading. The problem is that if you don't know what your strategy is, you can end up flipping from, say, one strategy of trying to buy a low to another strategy of staying out of the market, watching it climb this wall of worry where you're waiting to get in but too scared, and then almost the point where you get in can end up being very, very near the end of a trend. And that's what you've got to be careful of being caught out at. So it's important to have signals that tell you that we're pretty much at the end of the trend. And that's when fear and greed is at 100%. And maybe Donald Trump has announced that Bitcoin is going to be the reserve currency, or maybe going to back the dollar, or maybe gold's going to back the dollar with a combination of gold and Bitcoin. And then everybody piles into the market, right? I mean, perhaps this is a prediction. And that's when it would be very difficult to say, no, this is the time to sell gold. This is the time to sell Bitcoin. This is time to get out of cryptocurrencies. But because the news flow will look so unbelievably positive, people won't want to do it. So I'm looking for something like that. I'm actually kind of musing that scenario, because if you look at Elon Musk has been tweeting, he's been saying things like the debt is a problem. The debt load of the government is a problem. And that may be true. And it might be that he wants to move towards sound money. So what does sound money look like? Well, he's a tech guy, isn't he? And he's got the ear of the government. If he's a tech guy and he's got the ear of the government, you've either got gold or you've got Bitcoin, and maybe a combination thereof. And they both dabbled in it. So it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to put these two ideas together. So I think that could be the end, but it's going to take a little while. There's a lot that they need to do first, and they're doing first. This, I think, comes later in the cycle, and I wouldn't bet against that. But the whole idea is that as markets rise, and we'll look at the stock markets, most people will probably be short the stock markets at the moment, or not invested. Most people won't be invested in gold. Most people are not invested in Bitcoin. Most people are not invested in any cryptocurrencies, but it might not feel like that because you're in a very tech savvy, very tech centric area right here. And sometimes it feels like we're in a bit of a bubble but you've got to speak to people who have no understanding of crypto, maybe just dabbled a little bit of it, or in it, I should say, to realize perhaps how much you know. And I say you rather than me, because I'm just a technical analyst who likes to look at lots of markets, but it's you guys are the real experts in what's going on in all the minutiae of the cryptocurrency space.
Yeah, well, what are you seeing on the different markets around the world? And I had a question. So in the U.S. government, this Department of Government Efficiency is going around and auditing the different departments.
Yeah.
And next on their priority list is auditing Fort Knox. And what's interesting is I was listening to a report by Senator Rand Paul, who is the senator from Kentucky, which is where Fort Knox is. And they have not let him in the past 10 years go see the reserves at Fort Knox, not even go in the front door. What if they get there and there's not the gold backing there? What does that do to financial markets?
Well, this is an interesting question. It was actually I was having lunch with the fund manager today, who we were discussing this exact point. And yes, this has always been a question about, does it really exist? It's been one of those smoking gun type conspiracy theory type. Does it really? Does the gold exist? And the answer is I don't know. And is it that Fort Knox is just a front, in the sense that they've got the gold hidden elsewhere because it would be too stupid to keep it in one place in case it was all stolen or hit by something? And is it a security risk, so you wouldn't put it there, you just pretend it's there? Or is it genuinely that it's just, let's pretend it's there, let's say they've got all the gold there, but they actually haven't, and who would know the difference? Remember if you know anything about banking started in the Lombardy region of Italy. It's why the city in London is called Lombard Street, where all the banks were set up. And a bank stands for a banca, which is a bench, and that's how the banks used to do their transactions. And the way banking started was that the traders effectively held on to reserves of gold that were given to them by the wealthy merchants. So they would hold on to the gold, keep it in their safes, and they would go off on their quests for many years and then come back and want their gold. And they realized that whilst they were holding on to this gold, they could lend it out to people who'd want to borrow it for other things. So then they could charge interest on that gold. And then they realized, well, what's the point of giving them the gold? We could just give them a promissory note or a letter to show that it represents this amount of gold. And so that bit of paper became a piece of paper that you could exchange for gold, which is what the governments used to do until 1972, I think it was, when Nixon said that the dollar would no longer be backed by gold. And that's when you could just print money with impunity. And that's why Bitcoin was created after the 2008 financial crisis. By 2009, 2010, Bitcoin comes along as digital gold and money for the internet. So the point there is that the actual amount of gold that was being held was kind of not being used for a very good reason, because it was just sitting there. Nobody, it was owned by somebody, but it was being used for other things in the economy to make the economy flourish. And so it might be that somebody suddenly decided that, well, there's no point in having all this gold here. Why don't we just quietly sell it and pretend it? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to it, but it is definitely a strange question, a lingering question that needs to be answered. And it's also quite strange that gold has been going up so aggressively when the dollar has been kind of relatively strong in the last few months and is only just starting to go down now. So there is a problem somewhere, I would suggest. There's a smoking gun in the fact that gold is going up, and I don't know whether it's linked to this or not. But I think it's a very interesting question that needs to be answered.
Yeah, I wonder what happens in the financial markets if there is not gold there. Like if not just it's not there, but it's not anywhere. And why?
Yeah. Well, that's actually an interesting point. So, and sorry, that's kind of what you asked at the start, wasn't it? What would happen in the markets? Well, they'd have to make it right, wouldn't they? So I suppose they'd have to buy in that amount of gold in order to cover the reserve requirements. China buys gold, Russia buys gold. The US would have to buy a hell of a lot of gold, or decide that they need to replace it. And they certainly wouldn't want to do it loudly. They'd want to do it quietly. So maybe this is slowly what's happening, and perhaps they hold gold with other central banks and they quietly repatriate it. I mean, that's what happened in the 70s, and why the dollar came off the gold standard, because basically France said, we don't believe that the US has got the gold, or will pay us back, because the dollar was supposed to be backed by gold. So it was supposed to be the currency you could use anywhere in the world, because it was always exchangeable for its amount in gold. And France effectively said, we don't believe you've got it. We want our gold. And they demanded it back. And so that's what caused the run on the dollar and caused the US to unlink the dollar with gold. I mean, just look it all up. You can see. So if the question that we were discussing today was, will they go back on the gold standard? Is this something that they would consider doing? And if they consider doing that, a lot of gold has got to get bought. But I also think in this day and age, it would make sense for a lot of cryptocurrency to be bought as well. Certainly Bitcoin, and then a spillover and what we call a sympathy rally and everything else. But that might already explain why it's moved up to where it has.
What might that do to the DXY and the 10-year notes? And I know this is just a guess. We haven't seen something like this happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, it could set the dollar off. Well, if there isn't the gold there, and it kind of leaks out, and information is like that, it kind of leaks slowly into the markets, and you see the markets move, which is why I like technicals, because it gives you a heads up on what's really going on. I think you would sell the dollar if you thought that you thought that they'd have to buy a lot of gold or anything else. I mean, it just wouldn't be a good look, full stop. And pushing the dollar lower would, because they'd have to effectively sell the dollars and buy gold. So you'd be selling gold. Sorry, you'd be selling the dollar and pushing the price up of gold. So that would be the trade, knowing that that's what they have to do. So pushing the dollar down fast would just accelerate the upside in all the other assets, i.e., Bitcoin, all crypto, all equity markets. Now, whether it's a inflation-driven rally or whether it's a sustainable economic-driven rally, because a weaker dollar means US goods are cheaper, and then you get more buying of iPhones and other products around the world because they're costing less and more efficient to buy in different currencies is another matter. But it would definitely be a boost. But whether it's a boost for the right reasons or not, I suppose, is another matter. But a big correction in the dollar could well be one of the outcomes of that.
Yeah. Well, what other markets are you looking at, Paul? Let's pull up the charts and see what you're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, everything as always. So one of the interesting things that some people like to look for, and I don't necessarily do this myself, but I kind of keep it in the background. The end of January, you have some people look for something called the January effect. And if you look at what the markets do over the course of January, so if we take the 2nd of January here, and this is the S&P, and you have a little rally up, and then a big correction, and then a big strong finish. And then right at the end of the year or end of the month, you get a big correction, and then a follow-through move just after that. So what we're looking at is possibly a fractal of what will happen this year in the equity markets. So we might see a move up, then a correction into a new low, perhaps into, say, after March, April, and then latter half of the year, H2, we have a really strong rally with a December sell-off. So that is saying that we're going to get a fractal move of the January effect, as it's called, over the course of the year. Now, it may or may not work, but actually, I like the idea of a very strong rally this year, perhaps not early this year. Maybe there's going to be a bit of a correction, but overall, the trends still are looking bullish. This is a very nice short-term technical pattern in the Dow. And it's a triangular constriction, which is sitting just below the all-time high. Now, as long as it doesn't break this low, the outlook should be a sharp move to the upside. So whether we get a move down and then a move up, or whether it just goes straight up, I'm not sure. But the dollar's definitely weakening, which we'll come to, which would make me think that we're going to see a nice breakout to the upside. So risk on, broadly speaking, is still on. There's nothing to change it, even if this does come down, even if we do get a correction much lower than 42,000. This trend is very powerful, and it's still to the upside. Let's switch to the weekly chart, because that gives us a slightly more simplified chart here. If we look at the transports, again, that's still working its way up. NASDAQ breaking into new highs, which is perhaps giving us a little tip off that the Dow is going to move that way as well. As I say, S&P at all-time highs, looking to squeeze higher. That's all looking good. So regardless of any other position, risk on is still working. Now let's look at Chinese New Year. They've just had their the year of the Lunar New Year, or whatever they call it. I can't remember what animal it is, but anyway, we've got a Chinese New Year, very important for them. Look at what's happened in the Hong Kong stock market. Not so much the Chinese stock market, but the Hong Kong stock market accelerating up. But I think the Chinese market should follow suit. Maybe it's an accounting thing as to why that hasn't moved as yet. But this is a very powerful move. It's knocked on the door 1, 2, 3. This is the fourth time it's moving higher. Now, why do we care? Because China, huge economy, lots of risk on trades. These are going to form an important part of supporting the risk on trades in cryptocurrencies across the world. Now, gold, as we know, is in a bull trend. It's broken out a long time ago. It's still going higher. We've got silver moving into a bull trend as well in sympathy. Some of the other precious metals also moving. I won't look at them, but you get the picture. One really important commodity is copper, and copper has been in this upward trend. It's broken out aggressively, but it's heading towards these all-time highs. And if we take a step back and look at what's going on here, this whole area here is so very, very bullish. So when it eventually breaks out, this is really going to go. So I'm only showing you this because this is why I'm bullish. These are these reasons that the technicals are supporting more money flowing into the economy and things looking good. Now, it doesn't mean day to day, every day the market's going to go up, and there will be corrections, there will be consolidations, but the market is looking bullish here, and therefore my core view has to be bullish. Now, we mentioned the dollar, and we talked about it potentially topping out a few weeks back now. And yeah, I also looked at it topping out kind of, or breaking lower here, which I got wrong. And then I thought maybe it would have a correction into here, and it went much more than I thought. But then it gave some signals around here that the trend was moving towards the downside. There was a lot of talk of tariffs, a lot of positive reasons for the dollar to move up, and it stopped moving up. And that is, again, why I use technical analysis. When you look at the disparity between the reason for buying dollars, i.e. the tariffs and how it's going to affect all the other currencies, and the fact that the market is saturated, it won't move any higher, that gives you an idea that if the most bullish reason can't move it higher, then the path of least resistance is going to be to the downside. So the dollar is now starting to turn over. It hasn't been an acceleration of trend yet, but it's definitely looking weaker, and it's kind of fracturing against lots of different currencies, from commodity currencies to to sterling to everything else. So the dollar is weakening, and this is a good sign. Maybe Trump wants it, maybe he doesn't. I don't know whether he does or doesn't want it, and I don't really care one way or the other. It's pretty much what the market wants, and that's what's happening. So my feeling is that if we get this back into this area here below 105.88 and then heading towards 100, we could really start a big acceleration of this trend, especially if we break 100. So, looking forward into the future, if that type of stuff is happening, we're going to see a bull market on steroids with everything else. So we're at the early stages of that. It's just starting to happen, but those are the important things that I'm looking for.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this year plays out. I mean, historically, we have this beautiful 4-year cycle where every 4 years crypto has gone crazy. It happens to be the year after the Bitcoin halving. So the first Bitcoin halving in 2012, and the first 4-year cycle run being in 2013. And Bitcoin went to like $1,200, and then it came way back down to, I think, under 200. Before later in 2017 going to almost $20,000, and then coming back down to like, I think 3,200 was the bottom, and then it went to 65, and then almost 70,000, and then came down to 14,000. So we're halfway through this year. I mean, this is the chart that I look at, and it seems to keep within this pattern. So Bitcoin topping out here at 1,200 back in 2013. Topping out here at almost 20,000. Then here it had this double peak where it went to about 65,000 there. It went a little bit higher here, almost 70,000. And then we're halfway through the gains from this if we just have a normal cycle. Now, if it breaks above this green line, And some are suggesting it will this time because so many governments are getting behind Bitcoin and maybe countries making Bitcoin their standard. It's possible, but I don't know whether that will happen. Likely it will come up somewhere near this line and possibly be the top there unless we do have a super cycle. So we're only halfway there, and it does look to me like a 2 step forward, 1 step back. Just some consolidation. So it ran all the way up to about 108,000, and it's trading now around 93, 94. And it can be boring in the middle of a bull run. And you see right near the end how accelerated these peaks are. So this was 2017. And between March, had a big run, but really a lot of the run came between October and December. Just this massive acceleration since the beginning of like 20th of September here, or the 18th. It really bottomed out here at 3,200. And then between then and December, it went all the way to 20,000. So we've had some steps up, but the big blow off top hasn't seemed to come yet. And that will come at some point. What often happens is Bitcoin goes first, and then generally the altcoins follow, with some altcoins running at the same time. Curious to see how that plays out this time. Let's take a look at Solana. Now, Solana is starting to get interesting to me from the standpoint of, like, everyone's been talking about Solana for so long, and Solana was a really good deal way back when it was like $7. And it had recently been trading really, really high, almost $300. And one of my red flags that always worries me is when every crypto channel is talking about how bullish they are on something. I never, ever touch something like that. And Solana is a large cap altcoin outside of what I'm really holding anyway, because most of what I'm in is in riskier stuff. But if I were holding blue chips, I definitely wouldn't be buying Solana when everyone is telling me it's the big thing and it's going to go to the moon. Recently, it's had some price action that's very interesting. Let's take a look at what you see going on here.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anybody who's invested in any project will say that it's the best and it's going to the moon, I think. So there's a lot of hype, and sometimes it's justified and sometimes it isn't. What was clear is that it was one of the first to break out, and it broke out from a fantastic base all the way down here at 32.40, and we covered the first breakout and the next breakout, and the trend has been very aggressive in this area here, which was a similar area to Bitcoin when it was consolidating. People obviously lost faith in it because they lost faith in Bitcoin and they thought that was the top. And we got another swing again to the upside that matched the previous high. And then this next move was the convincer for anybody who was out of it. And I think all we're seeing here is some what we call Johnny come lately trades, where they're just being squeezed out. I don't think this trend is over. I do think it could get a bit more painful to the downside before it turns. Where the low will be, I don't know. But this trend is still up, and it's up from $32. That's the, if you'd bought it at this point, why would you get out? It's just the trend is still higher. But yes, certainly, again, it depends on where you've got in as to what your view is of the market. If you've gone all in and your position is leveraged, you're not going to be able to sustain this move, and it might even just move a bit lower, and that's it. You're all out and never want to see it again. But certainly in the short term, this is looking heavy. I mean, it looks like it is going to squeeze lower, and it's difficult to predict where this is going to stop. But usually in the center of the past consolidation is a good stopping point. So if we get to 145, maybe 144, I would possibly shut my eyes and buy some there, and then put a stop below 111 if that represented good risk reward trade on the right size of position. Longer term, 119, very good support, or waiting for this trend line to come in. I see no reason at this point to step in, so it would definitely be at this stage a wait in the short term. But in the long term, I think with everything else, it will go back up, and it was one of the leaders. So I still find it a very interesting project that just needs to take a breather, take a correction. Sadly, because, well, on the plus side, things when they move up huge percentages. On the downside, when they come back huge percentages. This is the game we're playing. We can't, you know, you can't have one without the other. You can't have big gains without big losses and volatility. So unfortunately, that's the problem here. But I still think it's one keeping in the top three, one that should be considered in the top three when it comes to the bigger projects.
Yeah, agreed. Solana has a lot of adoption, and that's one of the things that might push it through to an ultimate success. And like you mentioned, it has run up considerably already this bull run, which is something always that worries me rather than makes me bullish. Like Paul was explaining before, some people take an approach of using research to find crypto projects that everyone hates at the time, or in other words, the market is really punished and they've gotten really cheap. And then we know intuitively, in order to make money in investing, we need to buy low and sell high. That isn't usually what we do. We buy high and hope it goes higher. So I've seen a lot of people jump on the Solana bandwagon at these crazy prices, and even at this 280 plus price, thinking, well, it's the leader and things just go from strength to strength. And they forget the core principles of making money in crypto, which is buy low, sell high. And they're buying high, hoping it goes higher. And Solana is a perfect example of that. This overall pattern is somewhat worrying to me about how it's trading. And number two, like the gains already in, realize that it went all the way down to $7 here. So when it was trading at $280, essentially Solana is a large cap coin, was already up 40x for the run. And a lot of people buy expecting that it's going to have massive gains from here. So imagine if you buy something that's already gone up 40x and you're expecting it will go up 10x from there. That overall is a 400x gain for such a large cap coin. That would only possibly happen in a massive super cycle. So Solana has been completely uninteresting to me because a lot of its gains have been realized. And this recent price action is just what's getting my attention. Now, is it cheap enough that I would buy it if I were holding blue chips? Oh, no. No, I want it much cheaper than this. It was all the way down at $7. I probably won't ever hit that kind of price again. But even at 163, it's not interesting, but it is going the right direction. So thank you to whoever suggested Solana. Good one to look at. Let's move to our next one, which is ONDO, which I don't believe we've covered to this point before, but it is one that a lot of crypto channels are talking about. Let's see what's going on with their price.
Yeah, I'm really happy to look at that. I will just pop that on, but I just wanted to just cover off something very quickly, if I may. I was looking at the ETH Bitcoin spread, and I mentioned that maybe this is a signal that things will start to flip in terms of maybe ETH, but maybe also altcoins as well. And this is the chart. So it's pretty clear that the trend has been towards Bitcoin and against ETH, but this is what we call a spike reversal or panic, where it's panicked down and then recovered. And usually after a consolidation, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, this bases out and then starts to go higher. So that's the signal I'm looking for to indicate that we'll see either consolidation in Bitcoin and everything else comes up, or everything moves up, but maybe we'll see an acceleration in the altcoins or some of the bigger, well, basically ETH against Bitcoin. So that's definitely one to watch. I do like this setup. And so we'll be watching that week to week. But I just thought I'd explain what I was saying about that before. So ONDO, let me just get the right spelling, ONDO. Right. So ONDO it's got a bit of history. We're going back to January 24, and it's got that spike that's kind of making the chart look a bit strange. I don't know if that's real or not. Probably isn't, but it might be. Who knows? I mean, anything's possible, isn't it? In the short term, it looks like it's coming off, and very similar to pretty much everything that we've been looking at. Bigger picture, it's doing fairly well. It's managed to get into an all-time high here around the new year. So into the new year, we made an all-time high, and then it's been coming off ever since. Yeah, I like the trend. I think the trend is good. The trend is good to the upside. I just don't feel as though I want to step in at this point, because this move is starting to accelerate. You see, it started with a little move to the downside, and these bars are getting bigger and bigger. And today's bar is fairly large in itself, and we've got this price support here at 109. So I'm thinking around 88 cents. That's possibly where I'd want to step in to test the water as to whether the correction is over. So for me, it's a wait. Short term, longer term, it looks interesting enough to potentially be in an upward trend. But I don't see anything right now that's making me think I'm missing out on something. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe this is the low and it starts to go up and we'll have to reevaluate. At the very least, my tripwire for getting bullish would be this trend line here. So if we put these two highs across the chart, then it needs to break above that. And as that's pressing and pushing downwards, that trigger level becomes easier for it to achieve, if you see what I mean. So, but to me, that's the very minimum that I'd want to see as a buy signal. So for the moment, short term, it's a wait. Please look at it again and come back to it. But I'd be interested to know a bit more about it.
Yeah, ONDO is an interesting one in that this is, I see this kind of projects come out a lot in the crypto space where it hasn't been around all that long. So it's been trading since January of 2024. And it's been getting a lot of coverage lately. So it hasn't been out that long. Now it's in the real world assets category. It's already listed on Coinbase Exchange. It's getting coverage in a lot of crypto channels. So good that somebody suggested it so we could take a look at it. Now, generally we see this trend going up, but I want to share with you something concerning. Well, first of all, a huge amount of token supply was recently unlocked in January. So just recently. And a lot of these people haven't sold yet, but they now have the potential to sell. In fact, this blue part is private sales. We have a whole bunch in protocol development. We have a whole bunch in community or in ecosystem growth that I'm concerned are going to push the price down. In fact, if you look at the total amount that was in circulation, here it was a very small amount compared to what just got added into circulation. And then again, you have another year before more is added into circulation, but a huge chunk more. So this is just not the type of project I buy. Now, ONDO was founded by some Goldman Sachs people. They're in the real world asset place, so maybe they end up doing really well anyway. But it's a fairly new company with a $3.6 billion market cap that just had a huge token investing. These are all little red flags that tell me, no, this is not the buy low, sell high type of situation I'm looking for. Because though it could totally go up from here, it's unclear if it's low. It might be high, hoping it's going higher. And I just don't like to touch those situations. And that's if I was buying blue chips. This isn't the buy low, sell high type situation I'm looking for, because I do suspect it's high and you're then just hoping that it goes higher. All right, so for me, it definitely would get away. In fact, it would possibly even get a sell, and I would roll that into something that I feel is a stronger buy low, sell high situation. Now, the concern is getting so much coverage in so many bigger channels talking about it. That's like a death knell. When I hear that kind of stuff going on, always worries me. All right, let's take a look at DEVVE, one that we've covered a lot on this channel, and let's see what's going on with their price action.
Yeah, DEVVE's still consolidating, isn't it? It was one that was doing very well and squeezing higher. I think we talked about the dollar breakout here and also the breakout at 48 cents. But the trend line or the trend rate compared to everything else was just too aggressive. And also I think they had some really positive news, and it was a buy the rumor, sell the fact type thing, which we discussed. So I thought it might just consolidate a little bit around this area because that's where it topped out last time. So there's been a lot of supply, people looking for that to be hit again to get out of their positions, and um, it has struggled to break through that, and that's a short term. That's understanding. That's something that's understandable, I should say. It it's typical for the market to do that, especially when everything else is consolidating. It's not like everything's breaking into new highs and this is coming off. This is pretty much par for the course right now. So we were looking for a consolidation sideways, maybe a retest of the support, which it's done. Still looking a little bit heavy around this $1 area. It's chewing it, which makes me think it's going to shake out a bit more, possibly come back to this trend line here. We'll have to see. So short term, it looks a little heavy. Longer term, I don't think much has changed. The trend is still up, and this is just a healthy correction. Percentage terms, it's crazy in terms of how much it's corrected, but it's also, inverted commas, crazy how much it's gone up as well. So it's, again, it comes back to what I was saying before. These are volatile markets, the most volatile possibly in the world. So that's why, we're seeing this type of move, and they're to be expected. It's just obviously not very nice when you're long. So for me, short term, it's a wait, and I suspect we'll be waiting, a few more weeks yet. But longer term, it's looking bullish. I'd like to see it handle itself back into this area here and start pressing this high. And once it gets closer to that or makes some form of trend line test, we can start talking about, a move into this sort of area here. So I think that's for later down the curve, as long as the project keeps working and the macro scenario plays out as we expect.
Cool. All right, let me share this. So this is often coin market cap. I like to get a feel for some numbers here. So what is their current market cap? Well, for a layer one blockchain that can do more transactions per second than any blockchain out there I'm aware of, it's got an incredibly low market cap. Now, it's not as cheap as it was. This is when I was sharing about it a whole lot, and it got as cheap as 13 cents. And now it's all the way at 93 cents. It did hit like $1.80 here, and it's come back down and reversed about 50% of its gains there. And this is often a 2 steps forward, 1 step back that happens even in a bigger bull run. What I do look at is, what is the value here? 83 million. Will this one catch traction? Well, I think so. It's relatively unknown in the crypto space. Most crypto people are completely unaware of it. It's definitely not being covered by all the major channels yet, even though there's some foundational, really big things happening. Now, as somebody mentioned in the comments, it was recently featured in Forbes, or in this article on Forbes. Now, it's talking about blockchain rewiring TradFi, a $1 trillion shift by Rumi Khan, who's a contributor for Forbes, and it just came out on the 17th, so yesterday. And it goes through a bunch of things that are happening with real world assets and traditional finance. It comes down here and it talks then about DEVVE. Let's see where, somewhere down here, right here. The staggering performance pressure has sparked a new wave of foundational innovation. Rather than merely patching existing systems, emerging layer one solutions are re-engineering the blockchain's very core to tackle scalability and efficiency at an enterprise level. Among them, DEVVE integrates enterprise compliance frameworks with Web 2 functionality through RESTful APIs. Backed by global patents and non-custodial instant settlement exchange, DEVVE enables real-world asset tokenization, Goes on, talks about Will Stewart, who officially joined the DEVVE and their exchange team recently. He's been on their board of advisors, I think, for 2 years. Anyway, good to see them getting a little bit of traction in the media. Most in crypto are completely unaware of them. This is one that's been one of my favorites, my top 5 for buying low and selling high. Now, it wasn't anywhere as low as it was. It's getting really attractive again. And I think this one has a really, really good year. Now, full disclosure, I am really heavy on this one. I have a lot of DEVVE. I believe a lot in it, and I was able to dollar cost average at really, really inexpensive prices. So, yeah, excited for what the future may hold for this one. Let's take a look at OMI. For me at this price, is it a buy? Yes. If you don't have much DEVVE or you're trying to dollar cost average at DEVVE, amazing price to buy it at. A lot cheaper than the $1.50 and $1.80 it was at.
Is it for me or you? Sorry.
Yeah, OMI.
Yeah, OMI. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much guess what I'm going to say here. You know, for me, it's definitely a wait. It was, you know, downward trend. We saw this breakout and we went with this move, and then it came back. We gave it the room for a retest, but it was the break of this support that said, no, you know, this is acting too weak. So let's wait and see. And the highs have been just getting lower. So if you look at these highs, they're all getting lower, and it's just pressing this support here, which is kind of close to where its all-time low is. So there's not much of a margin here for me to be comfortable that that it, for me, would be worth buying, given that it could quite easily press lower or even just stay in a range whilst other things might be moving. So I need to see some change in dynamics around here, either a very sharp move that then gets recovered, or a break back over this resistance line. It was I guess a shame's not what you describe it, but it had such a powerful move up here, and it moved so much of the needle in terms of how bearish the chart had looked, that it's unusual that it would come all the way back down and retrace almost 100% of all the gains. So I have to approach it with caution. So yeah, it's not surprising, is it, given where it is? But you know, when these factors change, we keep looking at it, and I'll tell you when I think it's a buy. But for the moment, it's definitely wait, and could be a short-term sell for it to take out stops, and then we'll see if it rebounds.
Yeah. OMI is one of the ones that people love to hate on me for loving. And the price action is really concerning, right? If you look at this price action, so this is not on logarithmic scale. And so with some of the highs, it's kind of hard to tell how cheap this is versus this. So this was before the 2021 bull run. And you see most of the gains came starting in February, peaking out by mid-March. So these runs can happen really, really quickly when they do. But like I often say in the crypto space, that the pendulum swings too far each way. And you see the pendulum massively swing to the upside. And since then, it's pretty much been correcting down with little glimmers of hope, and then it dashes those hopes, little glimmers of hope, and then dashes those hopes. And this is one that I've been dollar cost averaging on. What I buy is I buy things when I feel like they're cheap and they're undervalued for what the fundamental value I believe behind it is. And I believe this one's massively undervalued for the fundamental value. Though looking at the charts, I can't tell you where the bottom is going to be, and often it's impossible to tell exactly where the bottom's going to be. There's not a lot of support in this massive run to be able to know where the bottom of this is really going to bottom out. And even then, it's just some indicators when you find these support levels, but see how it just did this massive run up. And so it's just continued to slide down. And I've just used that as an opportunity to continue dollar cost average, because I believe in the company behind this token, which is DEVVE and their digital collectibles app. which VV is doing quite well. The token is doing absolutely terrible. And I think that's where it creates the value. It's like the token's price is completely in the tank, which, remember, that formula of making money in crypto is buy low and then sell high. So the price on it is completely burned to the ground, which means it's low. And those are the type of situations where I feel like the underlying company that it's behind is doing extremely well, and yet the token is devastatingly cheap. And that's the kind of situation I look for. Now, back when everyone was talking about the token back here and the token price went absolutely crazy, I felt like the token price was a risk, and that the VV collectibles on the app were massively undervalued. And some of those from that point, when I was talking about the collectibles on the app, did 200x, while the token then reversed and came down quite a bit. Now that the token is so dang cheap, though I'm bullish on the collectibles on the app, I'm much more bullish on the token. And so OMI definitely gets a buy for me here, and I love it at these prices. So I'm glad it's hitting so cheap. I hope it continues to stay so cheap. I would love for some other things in my portfolio to do well, and then I can continue to buy OMI at these prices, maybe even cheaper, because that chart is not necessarily showing signs that it's ready to flip around yet. All right, let's take a look at, there's some suggestions in here, and we should have time to get to them. First, let's take a look at Bumper, because there was some craziness that happened the past few days that definitely merits us talking about it.
Yeah. I think the last time we looked at it, for me, it was definitely a wait. We talked about a while back, going back to the middle of January, how what it needed to do was put in a low here and then start to move up to form a base, but it rejected it. And these spikes have not been. I've not liked the look of them at all. And for me, it was I always had to come all the way into this area before I'd even consider it completing a base. So unfortunately, what we're seeing now is just this pattern of continued lows, perhaps capitulation, definitely an increase in volatility. Sometimes when the market is near an ultimate low, you get these final very sharp moves on high volume. Volume on this low was a little bit lower than the buying on the next rally. So perhaps there's a sign that the saturation of selling has occurred. But personally, I don't step in areas of like I will not step into something like that unless it's a lot clearer. It doesn't fit the bill of a spike reversal, which is usually something like this. If you can imagine this coming down here and then rallying up, that is usually the sign that the market is at the end. But even then, it can take a little while because sentiment is usually so aggressive at that point. It needs to just calm down a little bit, a bit like the dollar and the tariffs. It takes a while for focus to move away from it, and then for the trend to slowly start to filter through when everybody's forgotten about it. But this is still highly volatile, and again, as I say, not one that I would be ready to step in. I mean, look, people will buy it because it's inverted commas cheap. And for me, that's not a technical argument. It's not one I can use. But at the very least, the positive thing I can say is it's staging a fairly decent rally on a weekly basis. So that might be enough. I could buy it here and put a stop below this low, and that would tell me that's my parachute level. As I always say, there's a level I need to get out, and it just needs to trigger automatically, because otherwise I just get stuck in something that's getting cheaper and cheaper, and the capital just ebbs away. So there could be a trade there, but it's not something I would step in and look to buy. At the very least, I want to see this trend line break or some other evidence that we've hit a low. That's essentially what reversal patterns are all about. They're phases that tell us that there's saturation in the selling or the buying before it starts to then move into an upward trend or inverse into a downward trend. And then that late stage, you might argue, is when technical analysts will come in. But the reason why we do this is because we don't want to get caught out in something that we don't know anything about. And we're caught in a very volatile market that's still printing new lows. So the short answer here is it's a wait. We need to wait for it to settle down to see whether this is a significant low, and I'm sure we'll definitely come back to it. I am a little disappointed given that it is the perfect sort of environment for this type of project, as we've said a few times. But to counter that slightly, there are quite a few good projects that are also correcting. So it's in line with everything else. It's just a bit weaker than everything else. So, we'll have to see. Where I get truly concerned is if everything else was moving up and this was still moving down. So we'll have to wait for the correction in altcoins to be over and for it to start to move back up again, and we'll see whether this is part of the party or whether it's left out in the cold.
Yeah. So there was some news that came out on Bumper that one of their entities was in liquidation. It wasn't clear if that was the main entity or what. So it was somebody found that in Estonia or something that Bumper was in liquidation, and it looked like maybe the company had become insolvent. Well, finally, they got back to everyone on the Discord that no, that was an entity that they needed to have disregarded, and it was an entity that wasn't even being used. And so that's what really kicked off this massive scare to the downside. Like, oh my gosh, that's the death knell. They're dead because they've been slower to respond. I think they're in low flow mode, which frequently happens when companies are trying to hold on till the bull market happens. And one of my biggest investments last cycle, there was 2 points where I suspected, I say biggest investments, it was one of the ones that did the highest returns. There was 2 points where I thought the company was pretty much going to go under, and they ended up making it. Not only did they make it, but I sold at 100x return, but then they went another 30x from there for a total of about 3000x gains from where I bought, had I held to the very top. Bumper's at a really risky point right now. Now, it's scary to buy here, and it's risky to buy here because sure, maybe that was just a disregarded entity. They've been slow to get back to me. They haven't responded to my request to have an interview to see what's going on. I don't like that kind of thing. Another scary place for a company that did something similar was Solana. And we talked about Solana going to $7. But this is what the chart looked like when it was going to $7, is it looked like this. And it was a scary time to buy. It had been all the way up as high as 250 and was now trading all the way at, it only shows it going to just under $8 here, but it went all the way to 7. And it was a scary time because one of the big backers behind FTX or behind Solana was FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. And FTX was collapsing. They were going to have to dump their Solana, and everyone was scared that Solana was dead and it was going to fail. And that's what created really, really cheap prices. But sometimes we see that Solana recovered, and sometimes they don't. So it's like, if you're going to buy Bumper, go into it with full knowledge that like sometimes they don't come out of this. It's very cheap. If it ends up turning around and make it to the bull market, in fact, if it hits its narrative, and I like their potential use case a ton, which is why I'm a big holder in Bumper. And my holdings in Bumper have absolutely been savaged. Even when I saw the news, though, that like, oh my gosh, they might be going out, I was just like, it's down so much, there's no point in me even selling. I'm just going to hold on to it. So we'll see if this turns around. So I was definitely excited to see that, or hear their response, that that's just a disregarded entity and that maybe they are still alive. But it does make me remember back in 2020 and 2019 when I thought my Axie Infinity investment was possibly going to go to zero and that the company was not going to make it. I hope Bumper makes it. Risky time to buy. It's not a point I'd be throwing massive money in. Why? It's risky. Now, you don't have to throw massive money in, and you have high potential returns. Their overall market cap is less than $1 million market cap. If this goes to $1 billion market cap, that's 1,000x returns, even more than that. But it's a risky point. It may survive. So it is, what's cool about it is your asymmetrical upside in that, yes, you could lose everything. But if it does survive, it can easily go 50, 100, maybe even 1,000x from here. But it isn't something to throw big money at. It's too risky to take a huge position in this. So for me, it gets a buy, but just a small buy. And it's a very, very risky buy. All right, let's take a look at Illuvium. Rain, could you tell us what's going on there in Illuvium? It was called the most beautiful Web3 game, yet I rarely see much posts about it these days. It keeps making new all-time lows every day. Now, a couple of reasons for that. Number one, it's not a bad thing that not everyone's talking about it. It definitely does not mean it's not. It does not. It is not sell time when it's not getting massive coverage. So the question is whether it's buy time. Now, much of blockchain gaming isn't getting talked about on major crypto channels at all. Hardly at all. Even ones like Off the Grid that have amazing AAA level gameplay that I think will ultimately be very successful isn't getting much coverage right now because blockchain gaming isn't the narrative being covered. Illuvium is one of the top blockchain gaming projects out there, and it is absolutely gorgeous, and I like the collectability side of it. It's possibly a great time for people to buy. I really like the price of Illuvium, and I really like the price of land. And I would be stocking up more on Illuvium and land if some other things in my portfolio were going up. Illuvium land price has been on my mind, particularly the tier 3 and the tier 4 plots. I think are massively undervalued. So you're asking if it's a good time to sell them and possibly convert them into the tokens. Well, that's a decision you have to make. The token price is also really cheap, but the land itself is, I really like the price. So this is where the token price is at, and we'll pull it up so that Paul can take a look at the charts, and then I'll add some more words.
So it has broken into a new low, as you've said, and technically that's never a good sign. Obviously, it's gone below some very important support, which is around this $33 area, because it was key low here, and it played around it here as well. Managed to recover, and I think we gave it some room for a retest and a few opportunities to rally, and it's tried to printed a new low just to fake everyone out and then rallied again with everything else, but it's just not been sustained. So if we take the overall trend, it's still down, which is not great. So we have given it a chance. There have been pockets of buy signals, but it's just not managed to sustain it. And I think this has got to be, this trend line here for me is the most important characteristic of this chart, and one that it needs to break in order for it to confirm we've hit the ultimate low. Now, that doesn't mean it won't go up from here. It could well do, but for it to turn this kind of oil tanker around, this is what it needs to do for it to join a massive bull market with everything else, if that indeed is what's coming. In the very short term, it's also spiked lower, and a spike is normally a good sign that the trend is over. You'd expect to see that at the end of a trend. The only problem is it's spiked down and it's still heading back towards these lows. So it's not like this was initially seen as a great buying opportunity, and it was on the day, but it's slowly deflating again, which is not what we want to see. We want to see it do this and then hold around the highs of that bar to show us that whoever's bought it is not letting it go. But it seems like it's being sold into again, which implies we might see further lows, beyond this spike. So for the moment, I think for me, I wouldn't want to be stepping in at this point. just because there isn't enough evidence that the short-term low's in. And it needs to do more work for the long-term low to be in. The area I'd like to see it above is $30, just because that would be a recovery of its prior really important support that now has become a ceiling, or will be a ceiling of resistance. So if it comes back up there, anyone who's bought it against those lows will be looking to sell those positions. So I want to see how it would deal with that if and when that comes. But again, it's the same with bumper. If you look at anything, any chart of any market, they're all off. So everything is pretty much taking a hit. So there's a synchronicity in the short-term market that it's just kind of moving with that. So I want to see how this is trading when everything else starts to move back up again, because it wouldn't surprise me if it just rejoins the bull market, because that is the type of environment that's coming further down the curve. Now, I'm not brave enough to buy here. I know some people will be, but that's not what I do, and that's not what I have to follow rules as to what the chart looks like before I can step in. But if this is a short-term kind of sell-off that is very close to the end in everything, not necessarily this, then it would look like a good long-term buy. It's just that I can't justify that. So for me, it has to be a wait, but it is still an interesting one, and one that we've covered a few times, and I would like to come back to it because I want to see how it trades around this spike, and whether it does find some support and starts heading up, or whether we get a secondary sell-off and that becomes the capitulation that ends up being the low. So it's just not clear at this point. So when it's not clear, I'd have to stay out. But please do come back to it.
Yeah, I love that it's hit these prices, and this scares a lot of people. I think overall, the timing's really, really good for 2025. I mean, the U.S. has never been so bullish, the U.S. government, on crypto, and they influence policies around the world. If the U.S. goes very, very bullish crypto, and Donald Trump makes good on his promise that he wants to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world, that means other countries are going to have to become much more crypto friendly. And many of them have already been more crypto friendly than the U.S. But if the U.S. goes really, really crypto friendly, then to be competitive and try to draw some business there in this new technology space, they have to become even more crypto. So foundationally, crypto is in a really, really good place. We're in this, just people are paying attention to other things right now. And this is what creates what I feel is lopsided potential, where you have massive upside potential gains. And you always have the risk of losing your investment, but it's unusual where you get that technology is moving this way anyway. And everyone's mind is off of it. And yet probably those gains are in a pretty short time frame from here. Sometime in the next year, likely goes crazy if these crypto projects survive until then. And so I love this type of situation. And I feel like Illuvium being this cheap is just a gift to those that are willing to take advantage of it. Now, still could fail from here. They did get some additional funding. What was it, like 6 months ago, to give them additional runway. And I like that. Illuvium, like I play the game Illuvium Zero several times per week. Illuvium Overworld, I play every once in a great while. But I have gotten into their marketplace and bought some of their stuff. So I love what's going on with this game. I think that it's got really high potential. Before the token went all the way to almost $2,000. And it's currently trading at $17. Now, there wasn't near as many tokens in circulation back then when it hit almost 2,000. And right now, many of the tokens are in circulation now. So maybe it doesn't even go up to the price it did before. But even if it doesn't, it's got significant gains ahead that it would be 100x from here to go up to its previous highs, or a little over 100x. And maybe it doesn't do that, but maybe it does. Maybe it goes to 100x, 200x from here. Or maybe it just does a 30 or 40 or 50x from here. All of those are incredible gains, and probably much of that action is going to happen in the next 12 months. So I really like Illuvium. I think they're a fantastic AAA level game that's ready enough to get massive attention when everybody's focus hits blockchain gaming. It's just not there yet. So I think this is an incredible buy. Many across the crypto space will not take this buy. Keep in mind, only 5% of people end up making incredible money. I think this is lopsided risk versus return in that the returns, potential returns, are much, much higher than the potential risk. You could lose everything, but if you don't, then probably you'll make 30 or 40 or 50 or 60x from here, maybe even 100 or 200x. So I like it a lot. Cool. Thanks for bringing it up. It was a great one to look at. Ethan saying on bumper, how's your bump holdings performing now? My bumper position is still down from what I bought. When it dropped down to about 4.5 cents or something, I put like another $50,000 into it. And so obviously it's trading below a penny now. It's down. And I just wait in situations like this. Obviously, if I knew it was going to get this cheap, I could have waited to buy a whole bunch more. I would have loved to get it that much cheaper, because then if it does survive, the multiples are so much higher. It's just when you're buying low, sometimes it goes lower on you, and that's just part of the game. That used to really bother me when I was brand new at this, but it's just an unrealistic expectation to think you're going to be able to buy right at the bottoms. So with the approach I take, I just try to dollar cost average when things are cheap. As I get money free, I look at what I feel like some of the best deals are, and I dollar cost average across those. Carlos says, as related to the OMI token, I've never seen a token act the way a COMI does, especially this deep into the bull market. It isn't uncommon for something this deep in the bull market to still be going down. But you're not wrong there in that its token price is acting really weird compared to most of the other altcoins. And that most of the other altcoins at least hit a smaller narrative pump at some point since 2021. And it really hasn't. And so you're right, that part's unusual. But digital collectibles haven't really been in the narrative for a very long time either. So it didn't hit a mini narrative pump like blockchain gaming did, or AI did, or meme coins did. And so it's still getting punished severely. Now, part of the reason I think also it's getting punished severely is it was one of the biggest gainers in 2021. The pendulum swung too far to the upside. And so it's swinging too far to the downside. And this freaks most people out. And so, especially with what happened with Bitforex, and that got closed down, and then a bunch of people got their tokens back out, but they were just scared because the token price had gone down so much. They just dumped their tokens, which made the price go down even further, creating a potential amazing buying opportunity if it does turn around, which I think it does. But it can be really scary in the meantime. That's all our picks for today that I'm going to cover. I have some other things to get to, and Paul's been gracious to give us lots of time today. If you wouldn't mind, if you would suggest Star Atlas in the comments of today's video, we can make sure we include on the list to look at next time. Any final thoughts, Paul?
No, just good to be back. And yeah, I know it's in a correction, but I'm sure that once it's over, we're going to be moving into a more positive market. So let's look forward to that. And thanks for all the picks. Thanks for all the comments. Thank you for hosting, and see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Paul said exactly right. That looks like, and odds are that we're just in this correction in the middle of a bull market, and there's a lot more bull market to play out, which means further Bitcoin increases is my guess. Further altcoin increases from here, massive altcoin increase from here is my guess as well. And that's the way I've positioned my portfolio. Just know that in these times, like this is where a lot of people freak out and they take profits. I remember in 2021, I had a friend that had gotten into crypto in 2020. I'd call them and I was like, man, these prices are so cheap. You should really look at this. He's like, cool. And he put $5,000 in. And it dropped. He started watching crypto videos, and this point in the bull market, I think it was like January or February of 2021, Bitcoin had gone down. The altcoins had gotten extra punished, and he was mostly in altcoins. And he got scared and sold. And he sold at like his 5,000. He sold everything for like 3,200. And then altcoins started to pop off. And he had to buy those same ones back, but he was only able to get a third of what he had sold. So in other words, like if he had just held, what he'd sold for $3,200 was now worth $9,000. And he lost some of the additional gains that he would have gotten. Now he ended up doing still very okay with that $5,000. I think it went to like $50,000 or $60,000. But he would have been 3x higher had he not gotten shaken out during this type of time frame. And he was just scared because he was watching all these crypto channels and they were saying, oh, Bitcoin's going to go down a lot further. Altcoins are going to go down a lot further. And he sold. So realize this happened in 2021 as well. It's happening now. It's going to shake some people out, and that's okay. But everything is bullish for crypto. Now, I don't know what happens in a market where Fort Knox doesn't really have any gold, if that is the case. It was good to get Paul's guesses on it because we've not had an event happen like that. It's just a guess as to what happens with that. Maybe it actually caused a bigger run on crypto because, well, Bitcoin is then seen as a more important reserve because you can always tell how much Bitcoin somebody is holding. Gold, probably prices go crazy on gold as well. That could cause a massive crypto run or really spark off the next leg of what could happen. We'll see what happens in the US. Weird things. It's never had a government have so much scrutiny, probably in the history of the world before. Don't know how that all shakes out. It's pretty interesting to watch. Thanks, guys, for joining. Enjoy the wrap. It's just a fun way to wrap up our episodes. These principles in the wrap are critical to the way I've seen the people that make millions of dollars in crypto. This is how they approach it. And this is what I base my structure off of, how I play the crypto market. There's lots of ways to play it. This one is the simplest and most effective strategy that I've seen anyone do. And so that's why I pattern how I play it off. It can be frustrating because you don't know where the bottom is. You're buying when it's cheap. Sometimes it goes cheaper. Sometimes you see other things take off before yours. But from the bear market to the bull market, I've never seen a strategy that outdoes this type of approach. So still that bull market is coming. There's a lot of upsides from here, and I'm excited to see how it plays out.
To the space, chasing all of the games, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss, cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crafting. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When when I reach the top. Haters asking me how, cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, but time to slow down, addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.